You know that friend who's drowning but still says, "I'm fine"? The one carrying 10 bags of groceries, refusing help, insisting she's got it? She's the one who makes it look effortless when inside she's screaming. Yeah, that friend isn't just independent. She's protecting something. If you're someone who'd rather break than bend, who'd rather suffer in silence than speak up, who'd rather do it all wrong alone than do it right with help, welcome. You're about to feel very seen. And if your chest just tightened reading that, stay with me. Today, we're breaking down the psychology of women who never ask for help. The ones society calls strong, but science calls something else entirely. Here's the thing. Psychologists have a name for this: hyperindependence. And it's not a personality trait, it's a trauma response. Psychological research shows that women who compulsively refuse help often experienced early environments where asking meant rejection, where vulnerability meant danger, where needing someone got you hurt. So their brain learned a rule: don't need anyone, ever. It wasn't a conscious choice, it was survival. It's not strength, it's survival mode that never turned off. Think about that. The thing you've been calling independence? It might actually be a nervous system stuck in self-protection. Your body learned that help isn't safe. So now, even when you're drowning, asking feels scarier than sinking. You'd rather go under alone than risk reaching out and finding no one there. Research from Harvard Medical School found that women are 40% more likely than men to refuse help even when they desperately need it. Why? Because we're taught that needing help makes us weak, needy, a burden. So we carry weight we were never meant to carry alone. And then we wonder why we're exhausted all the time. Let's go deeper into where this actually starts. Most women who can't ask for help learned this behavior young. And this is where it might hurt a little. Maybe you had a parent who was emotionally unavailable. You asked for comfort and got criticism. You cried and got told to stop being
Why
dramatic.
can't I just
So
say
you
what I
learned,
need?
my needs are too much. Your needs became something to hide, not express. Or maybe you were the oldest daughter, parentified before you even understood the word. You became the caretaker, the responsible one, the one who holds it together. And somewhere along the way, asking for help felt like failing at your job. Like admitting you couldn't handle the role you never asked for. Here's what nobody talks about. When you're raised to be the strong one, you don't just become independent. You become allergic to vulnerability. Help feels like weakness. Leaning feels like collapsing. So you stand alone even when you're breaking. You'd rather shatter quietly than let anyone see you crack. A study from
Mom.
Yale found that women with hyperindependence often
Dad.
score high in childhood emotional
Why
neglect.
won't you look
Not
at me?
necessarily abuse, just emotional unavailability. Parents who were there, but not really there. So you learned to need no one because no one was reliably there anyway. You became your own safe place because nowhere else felt safe. Wild, right? But here's where it gets biological. Your brain chemistry is literally wired for this now. And understanding this changes everything. When you refuse help, your brain releases cortisol, the stress hormone, and dopamine, the reward
I can
chemical,
handle
at the
everything
same
alone.
time. So, you're stressed, but you also feel accomplished. Your nervous system is screaming, but your ego is saying, "See, you don't need anyone." It feels like victory, but it's actually exhaustion wearing a crown. It's a toxic reward cycle. Neuroscientists call this compulsive self-reliance. You're not choosing independence, you're addicted to
What
it.
if no?
Because asking for help would mean confronting
Too
the terror
much?
underneath. What if I ask and they say no?
They
What if
leave?
I'm too much? What if they leave? What if the one time I reach out, I get dropped? So you don't ask, you just carry it, all of it, until you can't anymore, until your body forces you to stop in ways your mind never would. And here's the heartbreaking part. Research from Stanford shows that women who never ask for help have significantly higher rates of burnout, anxiety, and chronic stress. Because refusing help doesn't make you strong, it makes you exhausted. Let's be honest, society romanticizes the strong, independent woman, the one who needs no one, who handles everything, who never breaks. But what if that's not strength? What if that's just unhealed? What if what you're calling independence is actually isolation wearing a trophy? Because real strength isn't refusing help. Real strength is knowing when to ask for it. Now let's talk about what this does to your relationships. When you can't ask for help, you can't build real intimacy. Because intimacy requires vulnerability.
I
It
need
requires
you.
saying, I need you, and trusting someone will show up. It requires risk. And risk
I need you.
feels terrifying when you've
need
been
you.
burned before. But if you've trained yourself to need no one, you end up lonely, surrounded by people, but fundamentally alone. Because no one really knows you. They know the version of you that has it all together, not the version that's struggling. Not the version that cries in the shower after holding it together all day. Psychologists say this creates relational hypervigilance. You're always scanning for signs that you're too much, that your needs are a burden.
Absolutely.
So
I
you
can handle that
shrink,
workload, no problem
you
at all.
perform, you pretend you're fine when you're falling apart.
I can hear
You
you all so
become an
clearly,
expert
but
at reading
I
everyone else but forget
just
how to
can't seem to
speak your
speak.
truth. And the people who love you, they feel shut out. They want to help, but you won't let them in. Not because you don't love them, but because letting them in feels too dangerous. Because if they see the real you, the messy you, what if they leave? A study from the University of Michigan found that women who struggle to ask for help report feeling lonelier in relationships than women who are single. Because being with someone but unable to truly lean on them is a unique kind of isolation. You're together but separate, connected but unreachable. Think about that. You're not protecting yourself by refusing help. You're imprisoning yourself. But here's what's important to know. Not all independence is hyper-independence. Healthy independence means, I can do this alone, but I'm open to support. Unhealthy independence means, I must do this alone or I'm failing. One is a choice, the other is a compulsion. One comes from confidence, the other comes from fear. So ask yourself, when someone offers help, do you feel relieved? Or do you feel threatened? Do you feel gratitude? Or do you feel shame? Does their offer feel like kindness or like proof you're not capable? Because if help feels like an attack on your worth, that's not independence. That's a wound pretending to be strength. The question isn't, am I strong enough to do it alone? The question is, am I brave enough to let someone in? Because sometimes the hardest thing isn't carrying the weight, it's putting it down. So how do you change this? How do you unlearn a survival strategy that's been keeping you safe for years? Step
Could you
1,
please
start
provide some
small.
assistance
You
with
don't
this
have
project?
to ask for big help. Start with something tiny. Can you hold the door? Can you grab that for me? Let your nervous system learn that asking doesn't end in rejection. Step 2. Notice the story. When someone offers help and you want to refuse, pause. Ask yourself, what am I afraid will happen if I say yes? That's the wound talking, not the truth. That's the little girl who learned asking wasn't safe. Not the woman you are now. Step 3. Practice receiving. When someone helps you, don't immediately reciprocate. Don't deflect with a joke. Just say, thank you. Let yourself be helped without earning it, fixing it, or balancing it out. Let yourself just receive. Step 4. Rewrite the belief.
My needs
Your brain
are
learned,
valid.
I'm too much. My needs are a burden.
valid.
So you have
My
to
needs are
actively teach
valid.
it the opposite. Try this. My needs are valid. Asking for help is human. People who love me want to support me. Say it until your nervous system starts to believe it. A therapist I know says this: you're not too much, you just learn to ask for too little. And here's the truth: people don't fall in love with your competence. They fall in love with your humanity. And your humanity includes needing help sometimes. So if you're someone who'd rather collapse than ask, who carries weight you were never meant to carry alone, who's so used to being strong that you forgot how to be soft, you're not broken, you're not weak, you're not failing. You're just operating from an old wound that convinced you needing help makes you weak. But it doesn't. Asking for help doesn't make you needy. It makes you human. And honestly,
I can't do
it
this
makes you
alone.
brave. It takes more courage to say, I can't do this alone, than it does to silently suffer while pretending you're fine. Because it takes more courage to say, I can't do this alone, than it does to silently suffer. You don't have to carry everything. You were never supposed to. Tell me in the comments, are you someone who struggles to ask for help? Or do you know someone like this? And if you want to understand the psychology that most people are too afraid to look at, the next
Ready to
video
explore
is
the
going to
path
hit you
to a
even
deeper
harder than this
understanding?
one. Click it. You'll understand why.